As someone who is chronically online, I've noticed especially this year that a lot of book content creators haven't been enjoying the books they've been reading. And since that demographic includes me, I decided to investigate. Are we becoming more critical, or is there someone or something to blame? Why don't we find out? When you start reading books, you're not necessarily sure what you like, and it can be difficult to differentiate between a good book and a less so good book. I remember when I started reviewing books, I was just giving everything about a 4-star because I hadn't really developed that critical lens yet, but now I have. Once you consume more and more pieces of media, it's easier for you to work out what you do and don't like. Thus, you become harder to impress, and you end up reading less and less 5-star new favourite books. I've got some data to back this up from my own reading. In 2020, my average rating was a 3.86 out of 5 stars, if you were wondering. Over the years that have followed, my rating has steadily declined. Of course, this could be for a myriad of reasons, but I do think that the way I view literature and interact with literature has changed in a considerable way over the last, I'd say, about 4 years. I mean, for one thing, I've started posting videos about books, which I never did before, meaning that I do try and think critically about things. With some books I read, it's almost like I'm actively looking for flaws to make a fun YouTube video about it. I don't think I can make this video without mentioning BookTok and its current impact on the publishing industry. For those who don't know, BookTok is the side of the popular social media app TikTok, where people talk about books a little bit like how YouTube has niches. It has exploded over the last few years, to the point where BookTok made me buy it displays have popped up all over the world. It has had a massive influence in the way that people experience reading, and we're going to dive into that right now. The format of these book talks are short videos, normally about 15 seconds long, at most a minute, where people share their thoughts about books and help to promote them. In a world where new pieces of media are dropping almost every day, for a new unestablished author, it can be quite difficult to get your book into the right hands, or just any hands at all. And BookTok has helped massively with this. Examples include the likes of Olivia Blake, Lauren Asher, and Chloe Walsh, who all self-published their books until traditional publishers picked them up because of their popularity on TikTok. These videos recommending books have to opt for a way that allows them to talk about the book pretty fast. So a lot of these videos consist of tropes that appear in the book, like enemies to lovers or a boarding school setting, that sort of thing. This way of marketing books has also led into book blurbs and seems to form the main body of some authors' work, since they know that a popular trope like enemies to lovers, think a la Pride and Prejudice, will sell. Publishing is a business at the end of the day, and they want to capitalize on what's popular. Now they've realised the impact of social media, what's popular in BookTok is starting to bleed into mainstream book spaces, and if that's not for you, tough. You're in a drought of good books. At least it certainly feels that way, or maybe I'm just even more angry because my favourite hobby is making me less and less fulfilled. Of course, there are other niches within BookTok. For every person who reads mostly romance, there's also someone who reads mostly classics, and so on. I'm thinking more about the new books that are coming out, rather than the old ones, because obviously there's a myriad of old books that you could go for. But newer books that are coming out do seem to be trying to cater with that TikTok audience in mind, which I understand why they're doing it. Just for me, as someone who's often quite critical of TikTok books, I'm not having a great time at the moment. I'm not here to tell you whether BookTok is ruining literature or not. At this point, our media literacy has devolved into a place where issues are either black and white, when on most occasions it's some sort of shade of grey. That is also another issue, but I digress. As much as I sit here and criticise how BookTok is influencing publishing trends in a way that I personally do not like, romance and everything, I'm just happy that people are reading, to be honest. I think BookTok has done a lot in terms of keeping bookshops alive over the coronavirus pandemic and subsequent period, because it's made a lot of people return to reading, and then a lot of those people have continued reading after things have got back to a sort of normal. It's keeping bookshops alive, and that is a good thing, fundamentally, as someone who likes going to bookshops and reading a lot of books. Have you ever read a book and thought, this feels really rushed? Well, with the allegations that BookTok is turning the publishing industry into fast fashion, this seems to only be on the rise. Several years ago, it was reasonably common for authors to spend years writing their next book. And while we complained in the comments of Goodreads reviews, it was fairly accepted. Art takes time to create, and to create well. According to the internet, The Lord of the Rings took J.R.R. Tolkien a total of 16 years to write, although I doubt this sort of thing is happening as much today, especially with authors writing their second or third book. Of course, there are examples like Erin Morgenstern, it's been 5 years already, what are you doing, Erin? And Donna Tartt, but they've both written more than one best-selling novel. For your average Joe Blogs author, in this economy, you've got to keep writing. Either that or your publisher is heckling you for a new book. And with this constant pressure to keep releasing things, authors feel rushed to finish their books as quickly as possible, which then doesn't mean that these books are as good as they could have been had more time been spent on them. I'm used to books in series coming out with at least a year between them, but I've seen more and more books in series come out within the same year. A major example is Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and many people, me included, criticized that last book for being rushed. In my opinion, let's chill out. As much as cliffhangers are annoying, I would prefer a wait if that means that more time and care has been put into that book to make sure it's as good as possible. It is frustrating, but with the amount of books coming out all the time, in order to stay relevant, you have to be fast, because the internet has a short-term memory. What was once 15 minutes of fame is now turning into more like 15 seconds. And I wouldn't be surprised if this gets worse over time. I actually saw a post yesterday about an author saying that they were coming out with 5 books in the next 12 months. 5 books! In what world is this necessary? I mean, will someone think of these people's mental health? Authors are already stressed enough to come up with the next new idea. Think of all the struggling writer films there are out there, and having to be on what seems like a permanent deadline with your books is obviously going to provoke even more stress. I know this is quite an extreme example, but this whole situation is ridiculous, and I don't think that's a controversial take. Something else I should mention, which is kind of a knock-on effect of this issue, is a rise in typos in books. Now, obviously no book is free from error, because no human being is perfect at spotting when a paragraph indentation isn't quite right, but it seems to be getting worse and worse over time, and definitely does lead to the idea that book quality is going downhill in favour of a cheap buck. So is art dead? No. But I think that authors aren't always being given enough time to fully realise their ideas. This, along with popular tropes, are potentially why synopses are sounding more and more the same. Although, interestingly enough, I remember having this problem like 5 years ago. A lot of these issues I don't think are new, I just think we're seeing the outcomes of them a little bit more. Another possibility is that your tastes may have just changed, and if you still own books of a specific type, you might not want to accept that, but at the end of the day, if you don't, then you'll keep reading books that you don't like. More and more I'm starting to feel like this may be a big part of my problem with reading, but if I don't know what I like anymore, then how do I find books to read? I guess I'm gonna just have to keep throwing books at the wall until I find one that sticks. No, I can't actually throw a book at my wall. What if it gets damaged? I don't want a damaged book for no reason. Solutions? I don't know, pray to the book gods that you'll love the next thing you read. Or something. In all seriousness though, I think a solution is to maybe branch out a bit. Start reading genres that you don't tend to gravitate towards, maybe try out some books that you're not sure you'd like. I recommend getting a library card for that. And just see whether anything surprises you. Chances are it will. Now, if you don't have a problem finding books you actually enjoy, please share your secrets in the comments below. I think some of us will appreciate that. Let me know what you think about this topic, and of course, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thanks for being here, and I hope you will join me for my next one. Goodbye.